Bardos 3. Last War of the Outer Rim. Day 412. Ruined outpost of Teskar. The women were whispering prayers when the ground began to shake. At first they thought it was another patrol from the Dominion. Another day of orders. Another day of fear. Another day of being shouted at, pushed around, and told to serve the soldiers who owned this broken camp. But then one of the girls near the door gasped, her eyes wide as moons. The humans, they are here. For a long moment no one moved. Everyone had heard the stories. Humans were worse than Dominion soldiers. Humans were beasts. Humans enjoyed pain. Humans enjoyed breaking prisoners. Humans took what they wanted. Humans touched without asking. The women froze. Their stomachs twisted with a deep, cold fear. Outside, heavy boots hit the ground. Metal clinked. Engines rumbled. A harsh wind blew dust through the cracks in the walls. And then silence. Not a peaceful silence. A waiting silence. A silence before judgment. The women huddled close, dirty blankets pulled tight around their thin shoulders. Their faces were hollow from hunger. Their skin was bruised from years of labor. Their clothes were little more than rags. None of them knew what would happen next. Only what they had been told. If humans find you, they will drag you out. They will take everything. They do not see you as living beings. A heavy thud hit the door. Every woman flinched. Another thud. And then the metal slide of a lock being cut. A small cry escaped one of the younger girls. "They're coming in," she whispered. The door opened with a slow, loud groan. Sunlight flooded the room. And shadows stepped into the light. Human soldiers. Their armor was worn and dust-covered. Their helmets were scratched. Their faces were hidden behind dark visors. They looked taller and stronger than any Dominion soldier the women had seen. Their boots planted into the soil with purpose and power. The women pressed against the far wall, instinctively trying to make themselves smaller. A human officer stepped forward. His armor had a blue stripe. He raised both hands slowly, palms open, showing he carried no weapon. His voice was calm, steady, almost gentle. "You're safe," he said. The translator drone above him repeated the words in the women's language. "You are civilians. You are not targets." None of the women believed him. They had heard those exact words before, from Dominion soldiers, right before punishment. The human looked around the room, his visor sweeping slowly but never stopping on any woman for more than a breath. He didn't shout. He didn't step forward fast. He didn't even touch the doorframe. He simply stood with open hands. "We will not harm you," he said. The women shook their heads in terror. They had heard that humans trick prisoners. That they pretend to be kind before they take what they want. One woman, Lyra, whispered, "Stay together. Don't look at them. Don't answer." Another woman quietly added, "Don't move. Don't attract attention." The humans looked at each other, confused by how much fear the women showed. Then something even stranger happened. The humans stepped back. A full meter. All at once. As if giving space was an order. The officer pointed to the ground near the door. He placed something there, carefully. Packets of food. Bottles of water. Thermal blankets. The women stared at them, stunned. Dominion soldiers never gave extra food. Dominion soldiers never gave warmth. Dominion soldiers took food away to control them. But the humans placed the supplies on the floor. And then stepped away again. No sudden movement. No hand reaching out. No touch. No danger. Just space. Just breath. Just time. One human medic knelt down and opened a small case. He didn't enter the room. He stayed at the doorway, lowering his head in a respectful bow. The translator drone spoke. "These are medical patches. No needles. No pain. You can take them if you want. If you want." The women had never heard those words before. Choice was something they had forgotten. The officer spoke again. "You can come out when you're ready. We won't rush you." It didn't make sense. Humans were supposed to be monsters. They were supposed to drag the women out, throw them on the ground and take control of them. But nothing happened. The humans didn't move closer. They didn't reach for the women. They didn't try to force them. They just waited. One of the youngest girls, barely 16, whispered, "Is this another test? If we move, will they punish us?" Lyra put an arm around her shoulders. "Stay still. Just wait." Minutes passed. Wind blew across the camp outside. A distant engine rumbled. Somewhere far away someone shouted orders. But inside the small room, the humans remained silent, giving the women all the space they needed. Finally, one of the older women, Sela, stepped forward a single pace. It was barely a movement, a trembling shift of weight. But the humans reacted instantly. They stepped back again, making even more room. Sela froze. She hadn't expected that. She expected them to leap forward, to grab her, to shout, to punish her. But they didn't. The officer nodded slowly. You don't have to fear us. It sounded impossible. Like a lie. Like a trick. Sela's voice cracked as she whispered, Why aren't you touching us? The words slipped out before she could stop them. The humans looked at each other, puzzled. Then the officer answered with a simple truth. Because you are not ours to touch. The translator repeated it. The words echoed in the room. And something in the women's chests broke open. Not in pain, but in confusion so deep it hurt. For the first time in years, the world did not feel like a cage. Sela dropped to her knees, hands shaking. Not from fear. From something even harder to face. Hope. The humans returned later in the day, but not with weapons raised. They came slowly, boots crunching over the broken ground outside the shelter, stopping a full 2 meters away from the doorway. None of them crossed the line. Inside, the women sat in tense silence. They had eaten only a few bites of the food the humans left earlier, terrified it might be poisoned. But it wasn't. No stomach cramps. No dizziness. Just warmth. Just strength they hadn't felt in months. That made the fear worse. If humans wanted to break them, this was the perfect start. A soft trick. False comfort. A trap disguised as kindness. Lyra sat with her back against the wall, arms wrapped around herself. She watched the humans through a crack in the broken doorframe. They stood still, their posture calm, their hands never drifting toward their weapons. One soldier removed his helmet. That alone shocked the women. A Dominion guard would never show his face. Too much pride. Too much arrogance. But this human, he was young. Tired eyes. Dirt on his cheeks. His hair flattened from hours under armor. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like someone who wanted sleep more than violence. The translator drone floated forward. Its gentle hum filled the room. You do not have to come out, it said in their language. But the commander wishes to take you to a safer place. The fighting has ended in this region. Ended? The women exchanged small, terrified glances. Nothing ended for people like them. They were always in danger. Sela, still shaken from earlier, stepped closer to the door and raised her voice, though it trembled. What do you want from us? There was a pause. The humans glanced at one another again, confused by the suspicion in her tone. The officer spoke softly. Nothing. The drone repeated the word. Nothing. It felt impossible. On Vardos 3 nothing was ever free. Every gesture hid a price. Every kindness masked control. Every silence was a trap. Lyra whispered, they want something. Humans don't rescue people like us unless there is a reason. Sela swallowed and called out again. We belong to the Dominion soldiers. We know what we are. Do you understand what we were used for? The humans stiffened, but not in aggression. More like discomfort? The officer's jaw tightened as if he understood too much and didn't like it. We know, he said quietly. Another soldier beside him lowered his head as though the truth weighed on him. The officer continued, voice firm. But that was not your choice. That was not your fault. And we will not treat you as they did. The translator repeated the words, clear and steady. A few women began crying softly. Not loud cries, but small, broken sounds that leaked out after years of being buried inside. Dominion soldiers punished tears. The humans stood still, giving them time, giving them space. They didn't move forward. They didn't try to comfort them. They simply let the moment pass without judgment. Eventually, one of the youngest girls, the small one with silver hair and thin wrists, walked toward the door. Her steps were tiny, shaking, but she kept going until she reached the sunlight. She stopped only a few steps away from crossing fully out. The humans reacted instantly, they stepped back. She gasped. She hadn't expected that. Humans making space for her? A civilian girl? Someone the Dominion used as a thing rather than a person? She lifted her hand slowly, almost expecting it to be slapped away by invisible rules. When nothing happened, she dared to take another step. Now she stood outside, the cold wind touching her cheeks. Her eyes darted around, expecting danger, punishment, or a rough hand grabbing her. But nothing happened. The humans watched her like she was a frightened animal they didn't want to scare. Their posture showed patience, not power. The girl whispered, "You're not going to hit me?" The officer shook his head. "Never." The drone repeated it. "Never." The girl flinched from the word. For her, never was a fantasy. An impossible one. Slowly, one by one, more women moved forward. Not all the way. Just far enough to see the humans clearly. Far enough to test the air. Far enough to see if anyone would punish them for breathing freely. But no punishment came. The officer pointed gently toward a group of transport carriers waiting in the distance. "We want to take you to a medical camp. You will have food, warmth, and beds. No guards inside your rooms. No forced labor. No touching." Every word felt heavier than the last. The women didn't know how to respond. They had no training for kindness. No memories of safety. No understanding of a world where a soldier didn't demand something in return. Lyra finally asked, "Why should we trust you?" This time the officer removed his gloves and knelt down, lowering himself to their height. Not in dominance, quite the opposite. His voice, when he spoke, carried a tired honesty. "Because you deserve to live," he said. "Not survive. Live." Simple words. Easy words. But the women felt something shift inside them. The Dominion had never spoken to them like that. No officer. No soldier. No commander. The humans waited. Not pushing. Not forcing. Just waiting. The youngest girl stepped closer to the officer and held out her hand instinctively, like someone reaching in the dark. She didn't touch him, she was too afraid, but she stretched her fingers toward him as if asking for something she didn't know how to name. The human didn't close the gap. He lifted his hand too, leaving a full space between them, palm open, mirroring her gesture. A silent promise, "I will not cross first." Her lips trembled. She lowered her hand slowly, but she didn't step back. It was the first moment of trust. Small. Fragile. Like a spark in a storm. Finally, Sela spoke for all of them. "We will go with you," she whispered. "But if you try to harm us..." The officer nodded. "You can walk away at any time. No one will stop you." The women froze again. Just freedom. Permission to walk away. None of it felt real. The officer stood and stepped far aside, clearing the path to the transports. He did not touch them. He did not guide them with a hand on the arm. He did not order, push, or grab. He only waited. Sela took the first step. Then the silver-haired girl. Then Lyra. The others followed, moving slowly, unsure, but moving. Not because they trusted humans. Not yet. But because, for the first time in years, someone had given them space to choose. And that alone felt like a doorway opening into a world they had never known. A world where they might be more than what the Dominion made them. A world where humans might not be monsters at all. Ravina woke before dawn, long before the human camp lights flickered awake. She lay still on the thin mattress, staring at the canvas roof of the tent, listening to the quiet. It wasn't the resting kind of quiet. It was the quiet after a storm, the kind where you wait for something to go wrong because life had taught you it always does. But nothing went wrong. The humans on guard outside talked in low voices. Their accents were harder and heavier than the words of any species she knew, but their tone was calm. Just calm. No shouting. No threats. No footsteps pounding toward the tent to demand something from her or the others. She sat up slowly. Lyra and Maeve were still sleeping, curled tightly like children, their tails wrapped around themselves. Lyra had cried herself to sleep. Maeve had trembled for almost 2 hours before exhaustion took her. Ravina hadn't slept. She had kept watch. Because someone had to. She pulled aside the curtain flap and stepped out into the cool morning. The sky was a pale wash of colors she wasn't used to, Earth colors she remembered the humans calling them. They weren't on Earth, but the humans seemed to carry their home with them, always comparing things to it. Like the universe itself had a reference point named after their planet. A human soldier standing near the tent looked up from his metal mug. Steam rose from it like fog from a swamp. "You're up early," he said. Ravina stiffened, waiting for the command that usually followed. Kneel, serve, obey. But he only nodded once and took a sip. She didn't know his name. They all wore tags, but the letters were strange and hard to read. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "Yeah," he answered, rubbing the back of his neck. Same. He didn't add anything else. He didn't ask her to come closer. He didn't even stare at her shoulders or hips the way enemy soldiers always had. His eyes stayed on her face, steady, respectful, almost too respectful. It made her distrustful. "Breakfast soon," he said. "Real food this time." She blinked. "For us. For everyone." Her stomach twisted. She wasn't sure if it was hope or fear. The human commander, Alvarez, stepped out from another tent as the horizon brightened. He carried a datapad under his arm and had the rough, weathered look of someone who had lived too long in war zones. But when he saw Ravina, he paused, not suspicious, not annoyed. Just observing. "You're awake." "Good," he said. "We'll do a morning check. Medical, food, basic comfort. After that, we move." "Move where?" she asked cautiously. "A safer location. Away from this ridge. It's too exposed. Also," he hesitated a moment, "you'll meet more of our people there. Medics. Counselors." That word, counselors, was new to her. She tilted her head. "What do they do?" "They help," he said simply. "Help." The word felt fragile. Thin. Impossible. Help was something she had never known, except from the other girls, and even then it was small help. Help to survive one more hour, not to live. Ravina wasn't sure she believed in human help. Not yet. The other girls woke slowly as soldiers brought warm food, simple grain porridge with fruit mixed in. The human scent of it was strange, but the warmth alone made Maeve cry again. Ravina helped her eat, steadying the bowl with careful hands. The human medics checked them next. A woman named Dr. Hayes walked around with a hollow scanner, her voice soft but firm. "You don't have to speak about anything you don't want to," she repeated every few minutes. "I just need to make sure you aren't injured." Ravina watched the doctor treat Lyra's bruised ribs with a cold spray that numbed the pain instantly. The girl gasped in shock. "That shouldn't be possible," Ravina whispered. "We developed it for our infantry," Hayes said. "Helps them stay alive long enough to reach real medical care." "You give it to us?" Ravina asked. "Of course." No hesitation. No conditions. Ravina had no idea what to do with that kind of behavior. When the sun finally rose, the humans packed up the camp with fast, practiced movements. They loaded crates of supplies onto armored transports. The machines hummed with power and their engines glowed blue. Ravina had seen hundreds of military vehicles across different planets, but human tech was different. Crude in some ways, advanced in others. Brutal looking but strangely reliable. Just like the humans themselves. She followed the group toward the transport but stopped halfway, staring at the open ramp. Her hands started shaking. Her feet felt heavy. "What's wrong?" Alvarez asked quietly. Ravina swallowed. Last time soldiers put us in a transport." She couldn't finish. Her chest tightened painfully. Alvarez exhaled slowly. "No one here will hurt you. Not in the transport. Not anywhere. You have my word." His word. The word of a human commander. She didn't know whether it meant anything. But then one of the soldiers stepped forward, a younger one with dark hair and tired eyes. He crouched down to Maeve's level and held out a hand, palm open but not touching. "You can sit near me if it makes you feel safer," he said gently. "I won't move unless you say I can." Maeve blinked at him, confused. "Why are you nice?" The soldier gave a small, sad smile. "Because someone should have been nice to you a long time ago." Ravina's throat tightened. The girls hesitated at the ramp, but slowly, one by one, they stepped inside. Ravina was the last. Her heartbeat hammered as she stepped across the metal threshold, expecting a sudden order, a hand grabbing her, something, anything. But nothing happened. The humans sat apart, giving the girls space. No stares. No whispers. No greedy eyes. Ravina sat down, gripping the seat as the doors closed and the engine rumbled beneath her feet. She kept waiting for fear to take over, but instead, something else crept into her chest. Uncertainty. Maybe even the beginning of trust. The transport jolted forward, rising above the ridge. Through the small window she saw the camp shrinking behind them. The place where she had expected to die. The place where the humans had changed everything instead. Lyra leaned against her shoulder and whispered, "Do you think they really won't hurt us?" Ravina looked at the humans, tired, scarred, serious but strangely gentle. "I don't know," she said honestly. "But they haven't yet." And somehow that single truth felt heavier than all her fear. The transport flew toward the horizon, and for the first time in years, Ravina felt something she didn't dare name. The future. The human transport touched down on a flat clearing surrounded by tall metal barriers and motion-sensing towers. Ravina stiffened as the engine powered down. The air tasted cleaner here, less burnt dust and more filtered oxygen. Human soldiers moved around outside as the ramp lowered, but none rushed the girls, none barked orders, none even looked at them for more than a moment. "Welcome to Forward Camp Aurora," Commander Alvarez said. "Temporary shelter. More medics. Actual beds. Hot meals." It sounded like a dream, but Ravina didn't trust dreams. Dreams were dangerous. Dreams meant disappointment later. The girls stepped down the ramp one by one. The ground felt solid and strangely warm from the heating layer built into the platform. Ravina looked around slowly, ready for anything. Human flags hung from poles, but not as threats. More like markers to help soldiers know where they were. Every human she saw was busy with work, not with staring at the new arrivals. A woman approached, older, with silver strands in her dark hair and a heavy medical kit strapped across her chest. Her steps were calm, not rushed, and her eyes softened immediately when she saw the girls. "I'm Dr. Rayan," she said. "I oversee civilian trauma cases." She paused, then added gently, "You're safe now." The words hit Ravina harder than expected. Safe. That word didn't exist in her old life. Safety was something you imagined for other people, never for yourself. Lyra clutched Ravina's arm and Maeve stepped closer too. Dr. Rayan didn't move toward them until they nodded. Even then she lifted her hands slowly so they could see her motions. "We're going to give each of you a proper scan," she said. "To check for injuries, illness, dehydration, things you may not know you have." Her voice was steady, patient. "Nothing will touch you without your consent. Do you understand?" That last sentence froze Ravina. No one had ever asked her for consent. No one had cared. She nodded, though her throat was tight. Rayan guided them inside a med tent filled with soft light and clean air. Human doctors moved around quietly. Every time they approached, they asked first. Every step. Every scan. Every small examination. Ravina watched in stunned disbelief as Maeve was handed a blanket and a warm drink and told to sit wherever she felt comfortable. The scans took nearly an hour. Ravina sat on the edge of a cot as a medic checked her vital signs. She kept waiting for something to go wrong, for a trick, a sudden order, a hand grabbing her. But the medic simply worked calmly, professionally. "You have older fractures," he said softly. "Healed wrong." He didn't press for details. "We can fix most of the pain with therapy and some treatments if you allow it." "Fix?" Ravina whispered. "Humans fix things like that?" "We try." When he finished, he stepped back and bowed his head politely before walking away. The gesture shocked her even more than the gentle treatment. Outside, the girls were guided toward the main shelter. It looked like a long barracks building but cleaner, newer. As they entered, warm air washed over them. The inside had rows of bays with privacy curtains, shelves with folded clothes, and soft sleeping pads instead of thin mats. Lyra gasped and covered her mouth. Maeve touched one of the beds like it wasn't real. These are for us?" Lyra whispered. A nearby human nodded. "Yes. Take any open one." Ravina walked slowly down the row, brushing her fingers across a blanket. It was warm. Clean. Simple. But it was better than anything she'd slept on in years. She claimed a bunk near the wall where she could see the entrance. Old habits. She sat down carefully, waiting for someone to yell that it wasn't allowed. No one did. Lunch came next. The mess hall was bright and crowded with humans, but they moved apart, giving the girls space without making them feel pushed away. Trays were filled with real food, hot soup, bread, something like vegetables but shaped differently than Ravina had seen before. Ravina hesitated, staring at her tray. We don't have to earn this?" A soldier shook his head. "You already did. You survived." The words broke something inside her. They ate slowly, trying to understand the taste of warm food after so many months. Maeve cried silently again. Lyra laughed at the strange texture of the bread. Ravina watched them and felt something she had forgotten existed: relief. After the meal, Alvarez found Ravina near the wall outside the hall. She tensed the moment he approached. "You're still watching everything," he said. "Not judging, just noticing. Good instinct. It kept you alive. It kept all of us alive, she said. He nodded. There's something you should know. The unit that captured you, those soldiers, we've detained them. They'll stand trial. Ravina blinked. Her heart skipped. Trial? Humans punish their own? When they break the code? When they hurt civilians? His jaw tightened. We don't ignore it. Ravina didn't know what to say. The idea that human soldiers would face justice for wronging aliens used as spoils of war, felt unreal. That is not what we expected from humans, she whispered. Alvarez looked at her with a tired, honest expression. Maybe you expected monsters. He paused. Maybe you needed us not to be. That struck her in the chest. The afternoon passed in a blur. They were given clothes, plain but comfortable. Warm boots, clean water, hygiene kits. Every new item felt like a luxury from another life. Ravina helped Lyra braid her hair with shaking hands. Later, a counselor named Mara asked if they wanted to talk, but didn't push. Whenever you're ready, she said softly. Not today. Not tomorrow. When you choose. That word again. Choose. As night fell, the shelter lights dimmed. The girls crawled into their beds, still confused, still scared, but a little less broken. Ravina lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. The sound of human soldiers talking outside drifted through the walls. Normal talk, relaxed talk, nothing predatory. For the first time, she didn't feel the need to stay awake the entire night. Her eyes grew heavy. Her breathing slowed. For one brief moment, the fear loosened its grip. Maybe humans really were different. Maybe help was real. And maybe, just maybe, tomorrow would not be another day of surviving but the first day of living. The morning began with soft light leaking through the shelter's fabric walls. Ravina woke slowly, the warm blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. For a moment she didn't remember where she was. Her body expected cold floors, harsh voices, the sound of boots outside a locked door. Instead she heard quiet footsteps, gentle conversation, and the distant clatter of breakfast trays. Human voices. Calm. Unhurried. Normal. Maeve was already sitting up, hugging her knees. Lyra was combing her hair with a brush she kept sniffing as though she couldn't believe it belonged to her. Ravina sat up last. Sleep clung to her like a new thing she didn't know how to hold. A knock sounded from outside the curtain. Morning, a soft voice said. Breakfast is ready whenever you are. It was Mara, the counselor. She didn't enter. She didn't peek. She simply spoke through the curtain and waited. Lyra looked at Ravina. They always wait. Ravina nodded slowly. Yes, they do. When they stepped outside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of fresh grass. Somewhere, water flowed through pipes humming with energy. Human soldiers walked across the camp carrying boxes, tools, and data pads. None stared at the girls. Some gave small nods, polite and distant. Inside the mess hall, the girls sat together at a corner table. Today's food was warm grain porridge with fruit pieces floating inside. Ravina didn't know fruit could taste sweet without chemicals. Maeve held her spoon like she was afraid the bowl would vanish. After a few minutes, Commander Alvarez approached. As always, he didn't sit until Ravina nodded. Only then did he take the seat across from them. We'll begin orientation today, he said. Just a simple walk around the camp. No tests. No pressure. Ravina swallowed. Orientation? For us. Yes. This camp is now your temporary home. You deserve to know the layout so you feel less trapped. He paused. You lead the pace. Ravina glanced at the other girls. They looked nervous but curious. We can try, she said quietly. The tour began near the medical wing. Human staff waved politely. Dr. Rayan stepped out to greet them with a warm smile. If you ever feel pain, dizziness, nightmares, or panic, she said, come anytime. No appointment needed. Nightmares. Panic. Ravina wondered how the humans knew those were constant. They walked past the training grounds next. Human soldiers ran drills, lifting weights, jogging in formation. Their movements were powerful but controlled. Ravina watched one soldier kneel to help another adjust a loose strap. There was no anger, no shouting. Just teamwork. Lyra whispered, they don't act like beasts at all. Ravina didn't answer. A month ago she would have called that thought dangerous. Now it felt true. Near the far side of the camp stood a fenced garden full of plants from many worlds. A human botanist explained they grew fresh food for civilian recovery. He held out a glowing leaf for them to see. Maeve's eyes widened. Is this for us? For all of you, he said kindly. Bodies heal faster with real nutrients. Another lie shattered. Ravina almost felt dizzy. Later, they reached a small rec area with benches and a low-volume screen showing old human films. A couple of alien refugees, different species, sat watching quietly. One waved at the girls, offering a hesitant smile. They're survivors too, Alvarez explained. You're not alone here. That sentence hit Ravina like a warm wave. Not alone. She hadn't heard those words since she was a child. After the tour, Alvarez stopped near a large metal building. His face grew serious. I want to show you something important, he said. But only if you choose to see it. Ravina tensed. What is it? The tribunal room. The soldiers who handled your transport, they'll face justice. I want you to understand our process. You don't need to testify. You don't need to enter. You only need to know that accountability exists here. Ravina's stomach tightened. She remembered their laughter, their threats, the hands they never used but always promised they would. Fear crawled up her spine until it reached her throat. But then she breathed out slowly. No, she said. We don't enter. Alvarez nodded respectfully. Understood. I wanted you to know the option exists. As they walked back to the living quarters, Lyra whispered, Humans punish their own? For hurting people like us. Ravina felt the shock in her own voice. Yes, they really do. Back at the barracks, the girls sat together on Ravina's bunk. The curtain was closed, the world outside softened by the fabric walls. For a while no one spoke. Then Maeve whispered, Why are they like this? Why be kind to us? Ravina didn't know how to answer. She was still trying to understand it herself. Lyra wiped her eyes. Because we're people, she said. They see us as people. Ravina's heart tightened. The Zareth Empire had never called them that. They had been property, tools, objects. And now humans, enemies, were the ones treating them like they mattered. Later that afternoon Mara visited. She sat on the floor, not the bed, keeping a respectful distance. I'm here to listen, she said, if any of you want to talk about what you went through. Ravina crossed her arms. Our past doesn't matter. Mara nodded. Then we don't have to speak about the past. She folded her hands gently. What matters is what you need. That question silenced the room. They didn't know how to answer. Needs were luxuries they never had the right to voice. After a long pause, Maeve whispered, I want to sleep without being afraid. Mara smiled softly. A real goal. And we'll work toward it. Slowly. Together. The session ended with no pressure. No digging. No demands. Just presence. When night fell again, Ravina sat outside the shelter alone, watching human soldiers move under the lamp posts. Their shadows stretched long across the ground. They talked quietly, shared food, checked on one another. Strong men and women, armed and trained, and yet they walked with gentleness. She hugged her arms around herself. The wind was cold, but for the first time she didn't shake from fear. A human sergeant passed by and gave her a nod. Not a smirk. Not a stare. A simple nod. Ravina nodded back. Inside the girls waited for her. Maeve was already curled under her blanket. Lyra brushed her hair, humming a soft tune. Ravina climbed into her bunk. For a moment she stared at the ceiling again. But something inside had shifted. The fear didn't rule her breath anymore. The darkness didn't feel like a trap. Before sleep took her, she whispered something she didn't know she needed to say. Maybe humans really are different. Then her eyes closed and for the first night she slept deeply.